Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending upon where you are when you're watching this. If you know me at all, you know that video is not exactly my favorite medium of communication. I feel I express myself better in writing, but in an attempt to stretch myself and to meet people where they're the most comfortable, which usually does not include having to read multiple pages of text. I'm venturing into this medium. So please bear with me with my awkwardness as I stumble with both the medium and the topic that is of great seriousness to me. I pray for my purification through this video and for the ability to share my journey of becoming, even in my infantile cocoon stage, in such a way that someone may benefit, including myself. I represent my vantage point, and I offer that in service as an alternative to the singular narrative regarding Swami Padmanabha that is currently being presented as an absolute narrative in my spiritual community. I also offer this for those of you who resonate harmoniously with it and feel supported by it. To some of my friends and whoever is watching this, you might not know the details of what's going on, and I'm not going to be speaking with very much detail in this video. Swami Padmanabha Maharaj has shared that himself at other times. But my level of involvement in this situation gives me a particular perspective, an insider's view, so to speak, that I place it before you simply for your consideration. I am a tiny voice in all of this, but still I am a voice. So the voice is given by God, and it is shaped and nurtured by the inspiration of my teachers. And I feel it is my duty to share it. So from our individual vantage points, we will see things in a particular way. It's natural, and this is how life is set up. It's a reflection of the system that allows God to experience so many flavors of love. Each one of us will love him and or her in our own very special way. And we will see his form and his qualities and his activities according to that love. If we all saw God the same way and loved the same way, then that would be rather boring and limited for God himself, especially considering that he is ever dynamic and ever blossoming with fresh youth. So if we all loved in the same way, how could his expanding qualities ever be appreciated? Individuality and subjective experience, it's necessary and desirable and aligns with our highest nature. We can't be removed from our subjective experience. It's the very process of seeing certain aspects of the world, certain qualities and situations, and how we relate to people. That is what we are, our individual experiential consciousness. That is hardwired into our constitution. Now we can broaden our subjective experience by viewing the world through the words of other people. And the more we open our vision in an inclusive way, then the more we can appreciate the many faces of God reflected within the facets of the many hearts. This phenomenon is experienced in our everyday dealings, even if we don't recognize God being there within the ordinary. Subjectivity, whether broad or narrow, it is what rules the day. If we encounter a situation and determine that there's a problem, depending on how close the situation is to home, to us, to our heart, we may or may not formulate a solution to that problem. And depending on our vision, if we do seek a solution, it will be targeted to a certain layer of a perceived problem. For instance, widespread hunger. Now, widespread hunger is an objective fact, yet there are many angles of vision as to the cause of the problem, different levels of addressing the problem, from cooking meals for the homeless, to working to provide jobs, to creating legislation, and even on the other side, people thinking it's caused by laziness and then working to inspire people to rise above that. But unfortunately, more often than not, there's a whole other layer of problems that is added to the situation when the perceived problem is something totally different than the actual problem. We may see a person and to us, they look hungry, and we may offer them a meal. Person explains, no, actually, I'm thirsty. We give them another meal. Okay, thank you for the meal, yet I remain thirsty. May I please have a drink of water? Can you please address this issue? But I just gave you a meal. Why aren't you satisfied? Here, look at what I'm giving you. Thank you. Yes, but I need this. But I have given you that. Yes, thank you. I appreciate that. But I need this still. I need this so I may continue and grow in service. But I have given you that. Now swallow it. If you cannot, then I can no longer help you. But I'm thirsty. Go away and think about all that I have given you. But the thirsty man does not go away. For respect for the service and the dedication to the giver of the food. And knowing that his continuation of service depends on that water, he fights for it and for the sake of the relationship. So a crowd forms and there's a commotion. Each person in the crowd assembles for their own reasons. The food giver comes back. You are still here? Look at the commotion you're creating. I banish you beyond the walls of this kingdom. I will never give you food again, what to speak of water. And then the headlines read within the city the next day, deviant, dishonest thief conspires to usurp power due to pratishta. So this is a simplistic depiction and a very broad stroked trajectory, which represents to me the emotional demise of the relationship between Swami Tripurari and Swami Padmanabha, which I experienced during close to the past 2 months. So I said I wouldn't give too much detail, but it deserves a bit of detail. While going over the past period in order to gather my thoughts for this video, I can honestly tell you that it has felt like lifetimes have been packed in to these past 2 months. Even trying to figure out where to begin was a challenge in and of itself. So I heard myself saying, where to begin? So I heard, the words of Julie Andrews from The Sound of Music come to mind. Start at the very beginning. So that's who can find the point of the beginning. But I'll start just a little bit before the point of my involvement in this whole situation, which was Vrindaranya's articles and what I perceived as unnecessary aggressive attitude towards Swami Padmanabha. So every beginning, however, has its own beginning. So again, I'll back up just a little bit. Shortly before a book called Inherent or Inherited, Bhakti in the Jiva, was written by Padmanabha Maharaj, which represented Swami Tripurari's theological perspective on an aspect of Gaudiya doctrine. It was just a bit before it was ready to be published. We in our Sangha learned that a god sister of ours developed a theological perspective and arguments opposing the book and the stance that Swami Tripurari had held for decades. Now, one thing to know is that in Sri Chaitanya Sangha, which is the spiritual community in which I have been involved in for the past number of years, in that Sangha, difference of opinion was not considered problematic. Changing one's mind, seeing things differently from different perspectives over time was not seen as a weakness, but rather an ornament of growth. Such an approach allowed for contemplation and for our understanding to be a continual process of shedding and accepting. So hearing that Vrindaranya had a differing opinion from Padmanabha Maharaj, our godbrother, and Swami Tripurari, our guru, it was not a problem. It actually held exciting prospects, even for Swami Tripurari himself. Although he may exclusively teach in one direction, he maintains space to see things philosophically from different perspectives. So in an exchange between Swami Tripurari and Padmanabha Maharaj regarding the awkwardness of Padmanabha Maharaj having just come out with a book and prepared to go on book tour, and now learning that the book actually no longer fully represented Swami Tripurari's position, Swami Tripurari explained that both perspectives could be held within our Sangha, and each person could decide which one resonated with them and nourished their faith best. So that was a rather unique and perfect way to harmonize differences. So Swami Padmanabha continued with his tour, and we all awaited the release of Vrindaranya's articles. Early September of this year, her first article came out, and an advanced copy was shared with me. And the excitement, my excitement, waned as I sensed an unnecessary dismissiveness and even aggressiveness towards Padmanabha Maharaj. It was not that she argued strongly against his philosophical points, as one would expect and would be necessary in such academic situations, but rather there was an undercutting and a disparaging of him in personal ways that served to have him, and therefore his philosophical position, dismissed. Not on the merit of the philosophical arguments themselves, but because of his lack of qualification to make those arguments. And as Padmanabha Maharaj was minimized, Vrindaranya was promoting the personal character and academic superiority of another devotee with whom she felt Padmanabha Swami had slighted in the past, and with whom her philosophical conclusions were more closely aligned. He was well known in the Gaudiya community. She herself was not. So it really bothered me and, dare I say, rankled me. Now this word, I'll tell you, rankle, it's an obscure word, but it has been used so many times within the past 2 months by our Sangha. I think we have probably skewed the statistical usage of that word. So next year, when they give the statistics of how much that word was used this past year, and if it moves, it's probably because it was used so much within our Sangha. But yes, it really bothered me the way she had spoken of Padmanabha Maharaj, that rather than put her philosophical arguments forward on their own merit, right? You have something good, you just share it. But instead, she felt the necessity to discredit the service that Swami Padmanabha had offered. And that, I see things, and I know it's my personal view, so I didn't do anything about it. It wasn't until once the article itself was published, and then Swami Padmanabha and myself started hearing the same reaction from other devotees. Now, first of all, I have no idea why people contacted me. I'm really, I have no standing really within the community. I'm just an old lady that lives in the woods. But anyway, they did, and here I am. So people were quite confused by her attitude and aggressiveness that I picked up on in the article. So no longer it just being my own thing, I drafted a reply to the article, bringing into question what I saw as unnecessary aggression. It didn't seem to me, and now others, that this was in line with public Vaishnav decorum. But still, I wasn't really convinced if I should post it or not. However, the next night, I was speaking with someone from the broader community about something that was totally unrelated. And they asked if they could ask me a question about the article. And they remarked that they expected that kind of treatment of Padmanabha Maharaj from outside of our Sangha, but not from within it. So it was really when I heard that I really felt compelled to say something, because now it's not just my own observation, nor is it, oh, if you heard some weird sounds, by the way, it's my cows that are on the other side of the bales of hay. So they're eavesdropping. So, and it didn't remain within our Sangha either. Now, the reputation of my then Guru Maharaj's Sangha itself was being brought into question. So I was hesitant for a moment, a very small moment after that, to actually challenge Vrindaranya publicly. I had heard many times since I had come into the Sangha to not do that unless I was willing to risk my spiritual life. My husband, Dulal Chandra Das, was one such person who over the years warned me of this. Now, I'm not so much fond of hocus pocus, and somewhere in the back of my beanie little brain, I thought, well, this might be a good opportunity to dispel that myth. Okay, then, not perhaps the best choice of freedoms. So just for the record, though, I still do not give my power over to that myth. Now, of course, considering how it all ended and the enormity of the devastation, how it turned out, makes all of these concerns really a distant blip on the continuum of destruction. Anyway, I wrote something and I sent it to a few devotees, 2 senior to me, and 1, although younger in age, is a person I respect for his adherence to Vaishnava decorum. So I sent it to them to make sure that I was coming from the right place and that I myself was not being unnecessarily aggressive. So all of them approved it. I submitted it to the harmonist as a reply to Vrindaranya's article. And at the same time, I submitted it to our Sangha's Facebook group. Just for those of you who don't know, this was later viewed as being part of a conspiracy organized by Swami Padmanabha, when in actuality, I really could not have even orchestrated the unfolding of the details that occurred if I tried. After I posted it to the harmonist and Sri Chaitanya Sangha Facebook page, it might not have, the group, it might not have happened exactly simultaneously, because I was like, which one, where should I post it? I don't know. So I posted it to the harmonist thinking it's a reply to an article. And there have been on the harmonist many contrary views, arguments, and challenges put forth on articles, in comments on articles that were published on the harmonist. So I thought, give it a try. Why not? Why not? It's been done in the past. So I put it there. Then I think I got a text message from Swami Tripurari saying that he saw I attempted to make a post on Vrindaranya's article in the harmonist, and they decided to not put it there, and that it would be better if it was not made public. And he was on the way to a doctor's appointment, having just hurt his neck. So he was going to call me later in that afternoon or tomorrow, the next day. So I, not assuming that he was going to call back right away, I just put my phone down and I actually came outside here and started mowing the grass. It wasn't until hours later that I went back inside, and the post that I had made in the Facebook group had already taken on a life of its own, with comments by Vrindaranya herself, Swami Tripurari, and Guru Nishta. So, oops, what to do about that? I had no idea. I hadn't given it another thought. And when I came back, there were, text messages and phone calls from Swami Tripurari to myself. Now, I did not respond to those text messages and phone calls, not out of defiance like it had been portrayed, that I defied my guru and I went against him. Honestly, it was just out of cowardness on my part. I really didn't want to get chastised for having let that happen, even though it was not my plan. And if they wanted it down, surely they themselves could have removed the post from the Facebook group. I was not the only admin. I was not the only person who would be able to remove it. So I didn't respond. And again, that also was considered part of the conscious and planned conspiracy, which I can tell you is not. It's simply, again, due to my own cowardness. So yeah, I am guilty of that. So in the Facebook thread, Swami Tripurari came out plainly saying that he didn't think that Vrindaranya had done anything wrong. However, in that same Facebook thread, the aggression that I and others sensed as being present in the first article was confirmed by Vrindaranya's comments. They were, her words were really vehement and angry and most definitely aggressive. The more she spoke, the more she revealed her animosity towards Swami Padmanabha. As she continued, I and others took more and more exception to her misrepresentation of Swami Padmanabha. Again, I'm not going to go into the details here. I know you are probably quite relieved at that. But Swami Padmanabha, being known for his care and attention to details and specificity, has offered way more details than I could possibly hear. They say that the devil is in the details, but actually it is in the details that we find individuality. And it is in the details where personalism lives. In this day of rampant impersonalism, Padmanabha Maharaj can be considered a radical personalist. Sociologically, I think the times in which we find ourselves now demand this type of approach to life, approach to our own selves, radical personalism. Even Srila Prabhupada was known as being one to fight against Nirvishesha and Shunyavadi. So to be able to engage with Swami Padmanabha on any meaningful level, one is called to task. Really, you have to up your game and face one's own self in relation to the self of all selves, and one's acceptance of responsibility to the tasks of a spiritual aspirant. I mean, just saying good morning has significance to him. If he says, how are you? He doesn't honestly expect an okay or a good. He actually wants us to relate to each other in real ways. So radical personalism is the approach that I see him representing. And I hope that no one is thinking that I am saying anything against Swami Tripurari by saying this, because that would really be basically pathetic. And it's exhausting to have to think doubly, like, how are my words going to be twisted? I feel very guarded in being able to speak freely, considering how much things are now just looked at in a totally different light. Like today, for a very tiny example, it came to my attention that Padmanabha Maharaj gave a class this morning at 9 o'clock. It happened to be the same time that Swami Tripurari gave a class somewhere else, 3 hours from here, but it was at 9 o'clock as well. But it came to my attention that there was talk. They were actually discussing this as if it was a thing to be talked about how Padmanabha Maharaj purposefully put his class at the same time as Swami Tripurari's. Hare Krishna. But it's, completely ridiculous and not at all true. Actually, the original plan was to have it at 10 o'clock, like his last week's class. But the translator suggested, because of the various times around the world of people that listen to him, that 9 o'clock in the morning is a better time. So he went with it. Not even knowing what time Swami Tripurari's class was. So I bring this up not because it's of any significance in and of itself, but this is the kind of scrutiny that we're under at the moment. So even though things don't make sense and they're totally absurd and not true, they feel there's a necessity to, first of all, they had to think of that and then talk about it amongst themselves and reach some kind of conclusion, perhaps, whether or not it was true. So whatever, but his radical personalism is something to be considered when judging him according to his level of detail. So it cannot, he wrote a 56-page document, and there's a lot of detail in there, which could be misunderstood as being an obsessive need. And I say this, I'm not just thinking of it, it's because it has been said about him, that he has an obsessive need to be right. But, that's for another time. That's for another discussion. I'll post a link to his documents and videos below in case you're the kind of person that appreciates details. Again, it's where our individuation exists, is in the details. So, due to the instability that ensued from my initial post, which occurred when Swami Padmanabha was in Colombia, hosting different classes and workshops, and it culminated in a japa retreat for the devotees living there. And his not knowing what was going to come up next, because things were starting to churn a bit, he canceled his last 2 places of his 6-month preaching tour, as well as his personal retreat in India. And instead, he decided to go to Alachua, Florida, where he could stay without expectations of doing anything other than tending to his god siblings who were looking to him for guidance, as well as his own processing of things as they developed. So Sumati and I drove from North Carolina down to Alachua. We stayed with my daughter, and Swami Padmanabha stayed with Archana Siddhi and other devotees that lived there in her home. So we, along with Pranada, offered support to our brother and our friend and our mentor, Swami Padmanabha, as he navigated both the relationship with his guru and the task of bringing to light dynamics within our community, which had been historically swept away, never being properly addressed or resolved, and which resulted in people leaving our Sangha or being escorted to the door. And this has been going on for decades. This dynamic hinged on the partiality shown to Vrindaranya by Swami Tripurari, to the exclusion of the welfare of other disciples. This time it happened to be Swami Padmanabha, but prior, there were many others. So please bear with me as I clarify a few things. When people hear about an unusually close relationship between a sannyasi, who is a renunciate, and a woman, even if it's their disciple, there's almost an immediate tendency to think that there was some inappropriateness on a physical level. But I can assure you that whoever thinks that in this regard does not know them at all. Being closer to one disciple more than others can happen depending on so many factors. This speciality was not, and it is not, the issue. Who would not rejoice that someone has a close relationship with their guru? That's not the problem. Doesn't mean there isn't a problem. This means there's a different problem, which is an over-reliance by Swami Tripurari on Vrindaranya's opinions of others and the shaping of his own opinion. Again, this is a huge topic that warrants complete exploration by the members of that Sangha, which is beyond me at this point. But because it is the crux of the matter at hand, I'll share this one thing that was shared with me during the unfolding of this. I was schooled by someone who is considered close to Swami Tripurari. He's not an official representative, and this person made that clear, that this was his own opinion. Yet, it is someone who gets Swami Tripurari. He has lived at Audarya with Swami Tripurari and Vrindaranya. He has witnessed dynamics between them, and he values them. So they offered their view with full intention of broadening my horizons, my understanding, and educating my perspective. This is what he wrote to me. Guru Maharaj certainly gives Vrindaranya full authority to correct and guide those devotees who are in particular trying to reach higher stages of advancement and closeness to Guru Maharaj. So this is a simple sentence, and it has a lot of implication. Wasn't Swami Padmanabha reaching the higher stages of advancement? And was he not trying to and had the potential to get close to Swami Tripurari? Seeing as how Vrindarani has little to no involvement with devotees directly outside of Audarya on a personal level, how does she know of what things need to be guided or corrected? And how does she go about correcting them? Kind of a mystery. But Swami Tripurari himself told me that she has an uncanny ability to read people. And she's able to almost predict when a person will cause unnecessary trouble. So, and then he mentioned a few names, and it was very painful because I knew those people. So I asked Swami Tripurari in a letter, which you can read in Padmanabha Maharaj's documents, if he had ever heard of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And there was no reply. And, well, he did reply, but not to that question. Actually, no questions were ever replied to in regard to Vrindaranya. Again, you can get all the details of my letters and his letters, and there's nothing held back in Padmanabha Maharaj's document. So to sum it up, the whole situation and the relationship between Swami Padmanabha and Swami Tripurari degenerated more and more in a dualistic way, as divisiveness was fostered by Swami Tripurari's own public words in the Swami calls and private correspondences. This whole saga ended, or I thought it ended, with Swami Tripurari publicly denouncing Swami Padmanabha as his disciple on Facebook in a public post. But like I said, I thought that was the end of it, but it wasn't. It wasn't enough. Most recently, a video was made by a devotee, Madan Mohan, who sharing his perspective on the unfolding of these events. And although the video is touted as being his perspective of objective facts, painstakingly gathered and considered over a considerable period of time, his conclusions were therefore objective in themselves. But I can tell you, I can guarantee it, that that was not the result. That is not what came out in the finished form. Numerous times in the video, he says, I don't know what Maharaj was thinking. And then he goes on to explain what he thinks Maharaj was thinking. So I can attest to the misrepresentation of facts since I was there. And since some of the things he speaks about in his objective video was about me, and not only my actions, but about my intentions behind them. I mean, does he not know that I could tell that he's misrepresenting my own self, that he was not accurate? And being closely involved in the actions of Padmanabha Maharaj, what he did, what he said, and him sharing his thoughts and his heart behind them during those weeks in Alatra with other devotees that gathered there. You know, it's not because I put puzzle pieces together after a bomb went off that I have a perspective. You know, it's because we were friends and I was there before the bomb went off. And I know what the puzzle looked like before it got blown apart. So, you know, you think you're putting puzzle pieces together, but you don't realize that there's more than one puzzle. You're mixing up the pieces, brother. Having been a witness to the unfolding, I know that the things Madan Mohan says are a misrepresentation. I would also comment on his interpretation of Swami Tripurari's actions, but he doesn't mention them. He doesn't mention anything that Swami Tripurari did or anything that Vrindaranya did. Somehow, this story has one actor, and it's Padmanabha Maharaj. You know, it's, I don't know, kind of a weird way to make a non-biased presentation. Has anyone ever wondered why the people who were involved, who were actually there, Archana, Pranada, myself, Sumati, who can attest to Swami Padmanabha's actions and intentions and characters throughout this ordeal, the respected members of the community, not myself necessarily, but Sumati and Archana and Pranada. You know, why do we all have this same reaction? It's not just me. We all have the same reaction, and we have all taken our distance from the Sangha. Have you ever considered why? Madan Mohan's video echoes the narrative given from the beginning of this fiasco. That we were conspirators, that Padmanabha Maharaj was dishonest, a blackmailer. Well, actually, that was a new one. He was just claimed before that he made threats. Now he became a blackmailer. So that's unique contribution of the video. That he was a traitor who broke his guru's trust, a deviant, who sought to erode the faith of Swami Tripurari's disciples due to his pratishta. My friends, simply watch any one of Padmanabha Maharaj's classes and determine for yourself if he seeks to undermine Swami Tripurari. During a 3-hour phone call with Vrindaranya while I was in Alachua, I begged her, just watch one of his classes. She said she had, and then she laughed out loud, dismissively, relegating his classes to low-level knowledge, which, according to her, is why we were attracted to them. This, unfortunately, also echoes Swami Tripurari's opinion that Padmanabha Maharaj simply flatters us in his classes, and that's why we like him. So nothing is further from the truth. I admit I had an intense reaction to Madan Mohan's video. Although at times I did have to laugh out loud because what he was saying was so ludicrous and his compelling arguments were based on nothing. At the same time, I was really devastated and filled with disgust by the things he was saying. I felt as if I had witnessed an assassination. The accusations and the charges made against Swami Padmanabha were of the most serious for a Vaishnava and a lover of God. A deviant, dishonest thief, a conspirator who set out to erode the faith of Swami Tripurari's disciples. Because why? According to them, because somebody said unkind things to him. The narrative word was pinched. I heard that word so many times also over the last 2 months. And his pride, his arrogant pride, got the better of him. Seriously, people, do you listen to yourself speak? Who are you talking about? Not Swami Padmanabha. Not sure who you're talking about. Sumati, who is watching this snuff film, she had to get up and leave halfway through. She actually never did finish watching it. I wanted to do so many things after that, but what I knew for sure was I did not want to have anything to do with the people who prescribed to this conclusion. Of course, anyone watching the video now who doesn't know how much is being twisted, they might think I'm simply overreacting. You know, they might think out of sentiment and love for my brother, you know, I'm feeling pinched. No, I'm reacting to a crime. Minimum is character assassination occurring in this video. A crime that not many will recognize and hardly anyone will question because it's so insidious. But if there has been any one particular thing during this whole 2 months that made me want to take the farthest step back, it was this video. Disgust is the only word that comes close to describing what I felt. Absolute and abject disgust. Well, it was the biggest thing until the next day, which was not an unusual occurrence in this unfolding saga. The next day I heard that Swami Tripurari was promoting that video of Madan Mohan's as fully representing him in the matter. The video that I was absolutely repulsed by represented Swami Tripurari. He sent a link to the video privately to close friends of Swami Padmanabha's, along with, a few choice disparaging words, and presenting the video as proof of Swami Padmanabha's dishonesty and a whole slew of derogatory qualities that conveniently justified his renouncing him as a disciple. The link was also sent to leaders in ISKCON, and other disciples in his inner circle sent links and emails to their god siblings as the doctrine representing Swami Tripurari. Again, please keep in mind that this was the single most violent thing I had experienced. And now, self-proclaimed, it represents Swami Tripurari. I could not, and I cannot, and I will not accept the person that that video represents. That person does not represent the kind of person that I want to be, or that I want to be guided by. And that's where I stand now. Continuing in pursuit of my highest ideal. If supporting what is not true to me is the price I have to pay for salvation, it's too high a price. The physical, the emotional, and the spiritual support offered in exchange for denying all that I have come to know as true, it's not worth it. I've been through a lot this past year. I have lost a lot, and I have become acquainted with the desert. I'm not afraid of it, and I'm not afraid of the dark either. If that is where the Lord sends me, I pray to go with the best attitude, an open heart, an open mind to his transformative power. I have been brought to the feet of many gurus by no action and no qualification of my own. I am but a tiny spark of the Lord's splendor, a jiva, an individual person in pursuit of love of God. I have no doubt that my Lord will make full arrangement for my continued correction in relation to that pursuit. I have faith. I have firm faith that because of the spiritual standing of both Swami Tripurari and Padmanabha Maharaj, nothing that transpired was without the will of the Lord. I don't think there was a victim, and I don't think there were any villains. But the Lord works in mysterious ways, and I trust he knows what he's doing. So that's my few words. Probably way too many words, but it's what came. I appreciate you being here. Thank you.